I've worked for a lot of companies, mainly because I'm quite old. And I worked for companies in the 90s who had really rubbish logos like that. I'm a visiting professor of Norwich University of the Arts, very proud of that. That's my only job I've ever done that my mother is proud of. The rest of it she's not really bothered about. I'm a trustee for the games industry charity GamesAid. We do a lot of bundles and stuff, and we raise money for children's charities. Did a little bit of stuff for Sony. People who are old will remember Ocean. Yeah, we're most famous for Daley Thompson's Decathlon. Not really a flick. Hey, we love Daley Thompson, don't we? Some of the games I've worked on, Planet the Apes, really good. It's come out on PlayStation. Some old favourites in there. My favourite game I've ever worked on is True Pinball, made in Sweden. My first million-selling game I ever worked on, and a bit of Tomb Raider and Hitman and Thief. Most of the work I've done, I started off as a producer, and then I moved into business development, and now I do a lot of business stuff. But I like to come back, I like to work with students, and I like to do a lot of work around encouraging women to join the games industry. And we can talk a little bit about that. So, Just Dance. Anyone know where Just Dance was conceived and where the development is? Newcastle. The Lego franchises. Knutsford. Cheshire. Tomb Raider. Where was Tomb Raider originally conceived? Anyone want to give a guess? It's a really sexy, exciting city. Nearly. Derby. So, okay, it now comes out of California, but what I'm saying is these haven't come from exotic Japan, somewhere in America. No, they've come from around the corner. So the UK creative industries are growing very fast. So 2.8 million people employed in the UK, 1 in 6 of those jobs are in London. And we'll talk a little bit more about the games industry versus the creative industries. Another one for all parents out there. This is games, this big bit here. Film, well, bit of music. But actually we're pretty good at what we do. Okay, that includes a little bit of software as well. We're not perhaps as glamorous. We don't have red carpet events and we don't have natural stars, but we're pretty good at what we do and we contribute a lot to the GVA. So, games, what are games? And actually here has a really good idea of what kind of games we've got. So we've got console, PS4, Xbox, we could put in there handheld with Switch and stuff. We can talk about computer games, and I hate the video versus computer game thing. They're just games. But PC and Mac, or we could look at mobile and tablet, so Android, iOS, Windows. We can also look at Amazon. They're doing some great stuff. So they've got their tablets, but they've also got the lovely Alexa and Echo and all their new devices coming out. They're quite exciting. We can do VR or AR or MR or XR or whatever reality we want to call it. Virtual reality I think is quite interesting. Augmented reality is really quite exciting. And mixed reality, lots of stuff we can do there. And in fact, London has become a massive hub for that. And I put in the bottom esports. I have to say I'm not really a target audience for esports. I don't really get it. But I thought I'd mention it as well because it's growing very, very fast. We're pretty good, loads of billions of people play games. Grand Theft Auto, I didn't do a Grand Theft Auto thing. So everyone knows, obviously, Grand Theft Auto is made in Edinburgh, because that's really a kind of American place to make Grand Theft Auto. But, you know, GTA 5 did pretty well. So again, a great stat. It was the biggest ever media launch. So that's bigger than any film, bigger than any music album. Ed Sheeran, you can, well no, I can't say anything about Ed Sheeran around here, can I? So Ed, you're great, but GTA 5 is still bigger. So that does pretty well. It sold, what, it made $1 billion in 3 days? I think it took Harry Potter, what, a couple of months to do that? So we're pretty good. Monument Valley. So, UK games industry, it's worth £4.33 billion. Wow, it's just a big number. We're just good and we make a big number. There are over 2,000 UK games companies. There are 117 in the east of England. So it is possible, if you don't want to move, you can do it here. You can come to London. You can go to Leamington Spa, because there's a lot of companies there too. So 95% of those companies are small and micro. A lot of them based in London and the southeast, but we have a very thriving industry in Scotland. a really fast growing industry in Northern Ireland, and some stuff happening in Wales. So if you compare us to film and TV, we're in fact all over the country. And I think that adds for great diversity in people's thinking and what they're doing and the kind of content that they make. Lots of people in the UK play games, and I think it's remembering who our audience is. I do a lot of lectures at Norwich talking about remembering who our audience is. If you're thinking about making games, think about who you're making the game for, and that number one person shouldn't necessarily be you. It can be you can just make games for you, but if you're thinking about commercially, think about who you're making games for, and that doesn't necessarily just mean men. Oh look, there we go. So 43% of players are female. It's amazing she came out of Derby. Any women here thinking of joining the games industry, please really consider it. Don't give up. There's a lot of us doing it. It's not as bad as people make out. I'm not saying it's brilliant, but 43% of players are women. If it's just men making the games, how are we servicing that market? I moved to Nokia in 2000 to do mobile games because I wanted to make mass market games. They were selling millions of handsets, hundreds of millions of handsets a year. It's a different audience, but it's something to consider. Most mobile games these days are live, so you've got a different skill set because they're continually live. If you think about Candy Crush, those levels are always live. There's always people running the servers. I think out of the top 10 mobile games, 9 of them have been there for the last 3 or 4 years. So if you want to make a sustainable business, if you can break mobile, you can make an awful lot of money. So let's talk a little bit about the workforce. Overall, we're pretty highly educated. So 86% are educated to degree level. That's not necessarily a games degree. People like me with a zoology degree. I mean, luckily I specialised. I did my thesis in the sexual preference of pigeons. So I can tell you a lot about how pigeons mate. That isn't a joke, that's actually true. But I did then do a master's in programming renderers. So a little bit of I'm not a very good programmer, but at least I learned how to program. So half of them hold a creative or media related degree and nearly 30% a postgraduate degree. But it's not the only way in. You don't have to have a degree. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So it's about 25,000 people working in the games industry. That continues to grow. And a lot of the stats I showed you earlier, and most of the data came from Yuki. I've got a slide at the end that tells you where to get lots of data. But basically, if you're a parent or if you're thinking about it, the games industry continues to grow. And the skills that you need within the games industry continue to be of interest to other industries. So gamesindustry.biz did a survey which I think more than 50% of the people thought they could earn more money in another industry because they have transferable skills. They choose to work in the games industry because it's fun. It's not always fun. Crunch isn't always fun. Working really hard, working on a project you don't like isn't always fun. But most of the time making entertainment, not saving lives, not doing really difficult stuff is fun. Skill shortage. Brexit's changed everything. Maybe 30 to 40% of the UK games industry are non-UK citizens. We have a number of skill shortages on the tier 2 immigration list, so that's where government will allow us to bring people in from outside the EU with certain skills. So they recognise that we need those skills and we can't create those skills here. But as Brexit comes in and people become worried about their jobs and their stability, there are more roles being made available. So if you want to jump into those skill shortage areas, now is the time to do that. So there's some figures about the kind of jobs you can earn. Oh look, a lot more money in production, that's where I work. A lot of that stuff is available online if you want to search it. There are a number of industry salary surveys that are done. And with the gender pay gap, we also were able to see what people at different companies earn and the difference between the gender pay gap. We're not great on gender pay gap, but that's because we don't have very many women and they're not in very senior positions. I'm not forgiving any company for paying their women less than their men. It's just a fact there are less senior women. We need to get better at paying our women the same as our men. So that also covers some of our key roles within a development team. Don't forget, on the other side of development, there's also the publisher. For example, I run the Imaginarium Publishing, so I don't make the games, I publish them like a book publisher would publish a book. So I look after PR and marketing, I look at our sales distribution, I look after our financing. Not the most creative side of stuff we're doing, but I'm interested in how much money I can make from exploiting the games that we make. This is a character, this is an in-game character out of Planet of the Apes. Just saying that, done in the Unreal Engine, sorry. We use Unreal. But Unity's really good. So geographic location, I talked a little bit earlier about where you can be based. So this has changed over the years. We didn't used to be so London-based. Manchester was a big hub, Sheffield was a big hub. They're coming back. This doesn't give you an idea of how many people are in each location, it just gives you the number of companies. The UK Games Map that UKI, one of the trade associations, has is amazing. So this is a screenshot, I did it for the East of England. The lovely red spot up there is Norwich University of the Arts. And there's a little number of companies around there. So there are 177 companies, games companies within the East of England. And some really big employers too. Glasgow, a lot of that's because of Abertay University. So if people don't know, Abertay is the centre of excellence. Universities-wise, I think they just gave themselves that title. But they do some really good things in Abertay, really good things. And we'll talk a little bit about the Dare Academy. Sheffield, a lot of that came out of Sumo, which was originally Gremlin. They've given these such unexciting names. God, who wants to work in the Slough and Heathrow cluster? Guildford and Aldershot. I'm not sure how many people are actually in Aldershot. It would be lovely to see this number, 117, 177, ones and sevens, that number grow much bigger. I am doing some work with Norwich University Arts to help that and see what we can do about creating a cluster here. But it would be lovely to have more stuff in the East of England. So companies are fairly new, so more than half are less than 10 years old, and we're pretty spread out. So what kind of skills do you need? We often talk about STEAM skills rather than STEM skills, because that art skill is really important. So understanding and having a holistic approach about what you're doing. So if you're thinking about what to do, having art in there as well is a really good idea. We can talk about T-shaped learning. So the industry did a report called the Next Gen Skills Report, where we looked at the whole of industry, and we actually did it across VFX and games. So visual effects, the stuff you see in movies, all the Harry Potter stuff. And we looked at the kind of shape of learning that we were looking for our production people to have. And we looked at T-shaped learning. So that's having a broad top shape, so understanding all the different production things. So having a basic understanding of art and programming, understanding Unity, so the stuff that Ethan did before, really interesting. So understanding how that works. You don't need to know the detail of everything, and then having a core specialist. So maybe your core specialism is music, maybe it's art, and then in particular environment art or concept art or whatever it wants to be. But having that understanding about how the whole process works is really important, because you'll need to talk to other people within the team, because everything that we do, apart from the odd one-person band, is about teamwork and delivering as teamwork. So if you think about that T-based learning, so when you're choosing subjects, choosing courses, keep thinking about how you have that broad stuff. And you don't have to be taught it in an official way. You can go out and find information on stuff and learn stuff. So some examples of different areas to think about, from 2D animation, code and trigonometry. All those things are really important. People like to drop maths and think maths isn't important. Maths is massively important, even if it's just being able to do your finances and your accountants and apply for your tax relief. Keep thinking about maths. And I know some people think it's hard, but if you can bear with it, it is really useful. So employers are looking for three key things: computational thinking, working stuff out, being a problem solver. Communication. It's great if you're the best programmer in the world, but if you can't talk to anyone else and you can't work in a team, you're not that much value. And can you work with other people? So can you communicate with them, but can you also work with them? No one likes the diva in the corner that no one can work with. So think about how you can come up with ideas with other people and show, particularly if you're going for a job interview, being able to evidence those things. So I wanted to highlight some of the things that were going on and some of the different age groups. So the industry is really keen to get new people to come in to start. That's not just because of Brexit, but games is also an area where I need to be really careful with my words because it's being recorded. People are interested in learning about games, therefore setting up a games course and charging people for it is quite a lucrative thing to do. What, as an industry, we had to make sure of is that we were inputting into a lot of those curriculum to make sure that they were relevant for people to get jobs. None of us want to see people scammed out of money because they're just keen to join games. So I've wanted to highlight some of the things that are going on. So Digital Schoolhouse down here, being run by UKI, the trade association, but being sponsored by Sony and Sega, is looking at schools, senior schools and junior schools, and looking at the programming curriculum and how we can help there. So if you know any local schools who want to get involved, that would be great to get Digital Schoolhouse doing some more stuff around here. It was really to try and shift the curriculum away from just using software to learning how to program. BAFTA Young Game Designer, BAFTA are here, they're a patron of the festival, doing some amazing things. To get a BAFTA when you're 15 also is going to help your career quite a lot. They do some amazing stuff. There's a lot of stuff on their website. People in the games industry, we can join BAFTA along with the film and TV people. We're not quite as glamorous as them, but we can still join and win a BAFTA. Next Gen Skills Academy, I used to work for them, but we created courses for FE colleges that were written and developed by employers only. So, and again, T-shaped learning, so you have to do life drawing all the way up to programming and further maths. You do that whole scope of stuff, and that's comparable to A-levels. University courses, we have a couple of ways of making sure these are fit for purpose. Creative Skills Set have a tick, and Tiger do accredited courses. So if you want to check out what course to do, those are two good ways of seeing what industry think. I'll talk a little bit about them later on. And then we have graduate competitions. So Search for a Star, run by Aardvark Swift, who are a recruiter. But they look to do competitions around graduates, helps graduates get their first job, highlights some really good people. Dare Academy used to be Dare to be Digital, run by Abate. Again, putting people together in teams and making games. I left apprenticeships down here kind of on its own because they are being developed. And they're another route in. If university is not the way for you, you can, I think the government expression is learn as you earn, but that's an alternative. Everyone talks about how important work experience is. So we're going to have people here, God, I work for Norwich University of the Arts, I can't say this. People here may be accruing some debt. People here won't be accruing some debt and will be getting work experience. There aren't any of these available yet, so you can't actually do it yet. But you also may be able to do this further in your career. So things to look out for. So we do a lot of stuff here. 60 universities providing 215 undergraduates and 40 masters in video games courses. That's an old stat, but that's a lot. So a lot of universities choosing to do video games. Always check which employers are involved and how they're involved in that course. Are they just on the website? Ring up, ask the tutors, ask people who they're involved, who comes to talk. At the end of the day, you go to university to get a job. Now, it may not be a job in pigeons, but it's a job, and understanding whether you want to do that job and understanding what skills you need is really, really key. Also find out what happens to the graduates. So this is a list of accredited courses from, I think this is Tiger's list, but there's also a list from Creative Skills Set, and you can have a look at the kind of courses. Most of those are the BSc, but there's a couple of master's degrees as well. We were talking before about Don't Forget Audio. There are very few in production, in fact none in production. That's normally failed artists or programmers who go into production, but hopefully we will address that soon and have really good routes in through production. So new apprenticeships. They're coming soon. Government are making this really hard for us, but it's good because they're written by employers. You learn from professionals. They're up to date, work experience is built in, you don't have any university debt. Although you do get an apprenticeship wage, it's not the same as a minimum wage, so it is lower, so therefore going to work in London is quite tricky. But employers don't have to pay you the minimum apprenticeship wage, they can pay you more. We've seen the VFX companies pay some reasonable amounts of money. And at the end of it, you have this portfolio of relevant skills. But you also probably have a portfolio, and that's really important. We have a games one currently being made called Community Coordinator. I think we've renamed that Games Community Coordinator. So that's the person who's looking after a lot of the social media, working between the consumer and the developer, taking a lot of the feedback that they're getting on their social media channels back into the developer. So there's a lot of work there about being able to do good customer service, but also being able to analyse the data that they're getting. I think it's particularly relevant for millennials and younger who are real social natives. A lot of us later in our lives aren't great on these things, and it's understanding what skills people have, innate skills. I was going to talk about being old. I shan't talk about that anymore. So if you're not ready for an apprenticeship, I'm going to another plug for Next Gen. We created this level 3 extended diploma in games, animation and VFX skills that was written by companies like Ubisoft, Sony, Microsoft, Double Negative, Framestore, Pinewood, Aardman, Blue Zoo, people like that who really know what they're doing. We are trying to get one and set up a college. So these are run at normal FE colleges. We are trying to find a good location to get one around here. So you could come on, I think we've got one person here at Norwich from these courses, but you can either go onto an apprenticeship or go to university or go straight into work. And again, that was the course where you go from drawing all the way up to further maths and programming. It's challenging. So what are employers looking for? People who are enthusiastic, good at teamwork, good at communicating, good at problem solving, have an attention to detail, are flexible. Everything changes all the time. If you're not good at dealing with change, maybe NOS isn't the place for you. Time management and resilience. I showed that logo thing right at the beginning of all the companies I'd worked for. I think 2 are still here. Not all of them went under, a lot of them were bought. So Eidos were bought by Square, Ocean were bought by Infograms, who were bought by somebody else. So a lot of things change, who your manager is changes all the time. It's working out on how you can be resilient and deal with that. Kind of back to the comment here about how to do things. Networking's really important. That's a really shocking stat about people getting their job informally and through mates. It's not great for diversity, but it's a reality. So the more networking events you can go to, the more stuff where you can talk to people, the more stuff you have online, the more you're willing to go on social media and talk to people, the better. But I think the important thing, and it comes back to there, is if you approach me on LinkedIn or you approach me, the first thing I'm going to do is find out who else you know. And I will trust you more if you know someone else that I know. And again, not great for diversity, but that's a reality. So by having a network and being seen about all these people you know, it is really important. Get involved, the stuff you can do. So game jams we talked about a little bit, games clubs going on, competitions, live briefs, a lot more of those becoming available. You can make mods, you can go to online forums, and you can share stuff. And again, sharing stuff's really important. There are things like, DeviantArt's brilliant for sharing stuff. Lots of people source stuff from DeviantArt. Unity, I'll put you number 1. Whoa! Code Academy, Blender, loads of stuff that's available that people can play around with and get involved in, and loads of really active forums and people willing to help you. Find out more. So there are lots of websites that have a lot more information. So NextGen has lots of information, but also lots of videos. So people who do a variety of roles will give you précis of the role they do. You can find that again, BAFTA Gurus. Brilliant website for finding out more information. Tiger do the university accreditation. Yuki have their great games map. Creative Skill Set do university accreditation and have lots of game studies. So lots of places that you can go and find out more stuff. That's it. That was just loads of stuff.